Hey, I'm Vicky. Recently I started following someone who's doing a 30-day LGBT challenge, and the seventh day, because I'm catching up, is how did your parents take it when you came out to them, or how you think they'll take it? I've already come out, so I'm just gonna go back. When I was growing up, just like so many other closeted kids, I was so sure that everybody was against me, right? Just when you have that big secret, you feel like the whole world is against you. And, growing up with my parents being who they were, my mom's a Korean, my dad's a Dominican Army officer, uh, both Catholic, very conservative. I was sure that they wouldn't take it well, and I was terrified. Even when I started coming out, my sisters and then my friends, as confident as I was in my identity, there was this fear that they would, there was this really big fear that they would just totally reject me. But the summer before my sophomore year of college, I was 19. I knew that it was time, just because my freshman year was so miserable because of how hard I worked to keep myself in the closet, even though I was going to college all the way across the country. I was so sure that if I joined any LGBT organization, the news would somehow travel back to my parents, or I wouldn't be able to keep that a secret, and I'd be out, and I was totally unprepared. I didn't have many friends. I'd pretty much hold myself up in my room because I was, homesick, and again, just the idea of becoming too close to these people I didn't know very well. If any of them found out I was gay, how would they take it? I never had to come out to someone I didn't know before. So I was miserable. So that summer before my sophomore year, I knew that if I wanted things to change for the better, I had to come out to my parents so I could be myself around them and have no more secrets and just throw myself into the LGBT community. So I remember one day, the day I came out to my mother, she and I were going for a walk in the woods behind our house. It's one of the reasons why I love Virginia. There's random woods, and I remember thinking to myself into the silence. I was like, "There's always silence between us," but this time I said, or thought to myself, say something you can't take back. Just blurt it out. Just say something to get the ball rolling. And what ended up coming out was, "Hey, mommy, remember when I was 7 and you thought I was a lesbian?" And there was another silence, and I remember worrying that maybe I just spoke too quickly. English is my mom's second language, or maybe she already knew what was coming and was sort of bracing herself for it. So there was a pause, and after about 2 or 3 minutes of mulling it over, she turned to me and said, "Oh, Bodo, I knew you were gonna grow out of it like your grandma grew out of it." And my stomach just plummeted, and I didn't know what to say. And finally, I replied, "Well, that's just it, Mom. I don't think that I grew out of it, and I don't think that I will." And she turns to me and gives me this very long, hard look, and then her face quickly changes, and I can't really read it. It's half amused, half bemused, and she's like half smiling, and I just can't think or understand what she's thinking. And finally she says, "You mean you attract to women?" And I think, is this a trick question? Uh, yes, I'm attracted to women. And she didn't say a word to me for the next 10 or 15 minutes. This is the longest walk of my life. And finally, when we hit an intersection, she said, "Well, I guess you're at that age where it's okay to experiment." And, and that really broke my heart because, she's basically trivializing, the past 8 years I spent, convincing myself not to end it all, and to deal with this really big secret. And that was the last she said of it that day. But that evening, my dad got home from work, and I had locked myself into my room pretty much, just trying to deal with everything. I decided that I wasn't going to come out to my dad right away, because I figured he would probably take it worse than my mother. But a little while later, my mom called us down for dinner, And I walked into the hallway, was about to go down the stairs, and I heard my dad's voice from his bedroom, and he said, "Hey, Vicky, come in here." And I did, head bowed, not really sure what to expect. And he told me to close the door, and he said, "Hey, your mom just told me that you think you might be kind of gay." And I just didn't reply. I just kind of stared at him, and I wasn't, is it too late to take it all back? Should I just say no? Haha, I was kidding. And he said, "Well, was it true?" And I felt myself force my head to nod very slowly. And he just looked at me, and his facial expression changed entirely. And it wasn't at all what I expected. It was so tender and so loving. And I remember he said, "Well, this doesn't change anything. You're still our daughter, and we love you very much, and we always will. It might take us a little while to catch up, keep up with everything you're doing, but we're going to be here for you. This doesn't change that." And and that meant the world to me, and it was so unexpected. And I remember in that moment just thinking, wow, I've really taken them for granted. I really am just very, very lucky. I couldn't reply. I was sure that as soon as I opened my mouth, I would start sobbing, and it'd be awful. But and so I didn't say a word. But the next morning, because he had to get up pretty early to go to work, I got up at around 4 in the morning and waited for him down in the living room. And he came down and asked me what I was doing up so early. And again, I couldn't talk, but I knew I had to show him how much I appreciated what he said. And so I gave him this big hug, and we just hugged each other for a while. And that was really about it. That's how my dad took it. A couple of days later, my mom did pull me aside, and she said that we needed to talk more about what we had, discussed a couple of days before, because she felt bad that she didn't give it the attention it deserved. And she just asked me a series of really in-depth, really painful questions that I was eager to answer, no matter how personal they were. And what I started to realize was that, my mother didn't take it, as well as she could have, not because she rejected me or rejected my sexuality. It was that she was really worried. As an immigrant whose second language was English, she faced a lot of discrimination when she came to the U.S., and a lot of her questions had a lot to do with the experience of being ostracized by other people. And that was the closest I'd ever felt to my mother. And to this day, they're very supportive. My dad calls me up regularly and asks me how I'm doing with the ladies, which is always really awkward. But it's great, and I've been really lucky. So I hope that comforts some of you, or makes you laugh. Yeah. See you later.